Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies, recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Emilio.
I'm Madeline.
And I'm Julian. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together, talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we would love to hear from you. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
In addition to these main episodes, we record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. While we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we continue our current cycle of New York City movies with a category we call Mise-Unseen, where the three of us watch a film that none of us have seen before and discuss our impressions and main takeaways from a first viewing.
And this week, we are going to be watching the directorial debut of Joan Micklin Silver, Hester Street, from 1975.
Yes, starring Carol Kane in a breakout role. Though before we get too deep into discussing Hester Street, there's a few other titles we do not want to confuse that with, such as Crossing Delancey,
Obviously.
which is
Yeah,
perhaps
definitely.
Hester Street is one of the best-known films by its director, Joan Micklin Silver, and Crossing Delancey is perhaps the other best-known film by her. Now, these are both also films that refer to streets within a few blocks of each other on the Lower East Side. So there's that. And to describe a slightly specific scenario, so say you're a New York filmgoer who lives along the M or the J trains.
Like maybe two of us here?
Yes. And you live in Brooklyn or Queens, and you want to go into Manhattan to go to the Metrograph, which is located adjacent to Hester Street.
There we go.
In order to get to Hester Street, you must first cross Delancey.
Get out of here.
True.
Wow.
Good job.
Yeah.
I would also say that Hester Street is not to be confused with the film Hesher, which is from 2010, about a boy who befriends a neighborhood burnout, and it stars Natalie Portman, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Rainn Wilson, amongst others. This is one of those movies that seems like it would have gotten a lot more traction based on the popularity of the actors, but I don't think it really went anywhere. I have not seen it, but I know enough about it to say that it is very different from Hester Street,
Yeah,
so do
it
not
sounds
confuse
like
the two. Yeah.
And although this film is also titled after a road that runs east-west on the Isle of Manhattan, this is not to be confused with Sesame Street.
Very true.
Or, along the same parameters, it's also not to be confused with Wall Street.
That's true.
Ah.
Or the Wolf of.
Yes.
This is
none
a good
of those.
point.
And Wall Street, though its identity as a street is very different from Hester, still lower Manhattan. These are streets from like before when Manhattan had much of a grid. Maybe like a cartographer at the time could have confused them with each other.
That's true. And let's not forget too that Wall Street is actually a film, and it's also about a young man eager to make it in America by way of New York City. And both of these films are named, as you said, after streets on the southern end of the island.
Yes. But no, we are not talking about any of those films. We're not even talking about the street, Hester Street. We're talking about the film now.
Although I did a couple weeks ago, I was in that general area and I was like, I'm just going to walk Hester Street, like from one end to the other. It's not very long. It doesn't take very long. And it does not look anything like it does in this film.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I mean, the film takes place, about 130 years
Exactly.
before now? But maybe there are some things that would not have changed in that time that should still be there.
That geographically, it's probably pretty similar.
Well, notably, the exteriors of this film were not shot on the actual Hester Street. They were shot in the West Village on Morton Street.
That
There
makes
we go.
sense because Hester Street does not and did not, I would assume, in the 70s look the way that they needed this film to look.
Right. And the anecdote that I read on the Wikipedia page is that they had to go with Morton Street instead because the actual Hester Street had a lot of Spanish language signage up at the time that they could not remove due to the film's low budget.
So we said we weren't going to talk about the street, Hester Street, but we had to get in a little bit. So now we're going to talk about the film.
Yes.
That's true. And stick around for a conversation with Sharyn Rothstein, which we'll put towards the end of our discussion today. Sharyn is an accomplished playwright and writer who recently adapted Hester Street for the stage. We're excited to get to talk to her about her work as a writer, her personal history with the film, what it was like to adapt it, and observations from the film that really resonated with her.
Yes, stick around for that. So, getting into the film, Hester Street, obviously we're all seeing it for the first time for this discussion,
Yeah.
but what knowledge or relationship did any of us have with it before this week?
So obviously, Carol Kane is the star of this movie and her breakout role. She has another big movie in 1975, a film that we have covered that
Yes.
you, Julian, watch regularly.
It's been a few months, but I've
It's
gotta
been a
step it up.
few months.
That sounds like regularly.
It's
enough.
been 6 months now.
You watch
Yeah.
like once a year or so?
Well, 3 times last year.
I think that qualifies as enough.
It's
Yeah.
regularly. It's more regularly than I watch any movie. But the film of Carol Kane's that Julian, you watch semi-regularly is Dog Day Afternoon. Comes out the same year. And so when we covered Dog Day Afternoon and I see Carol Kane and she's so cute and she's so young and I'm like, whoa, that's Carol Kane. So I was looking her up, like, what is she up to at this time? And I was like, oh, that's so interesting that she's nominated for an Oscar the year Dog Day Afternoon comes out.
And that's a huge Oscar year.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Like
And
if
we've
you-
already covered 3 Best Picture noms from that year.
That's
Yeah.
true, but I think even if you were to remove any of our involvement with Oscar years,
still a huge year.
It's still an enormous year. And so yeah, for her to have a place in that conversation, no small task.
Yeah, that's still a really significant thing. Alongside all these other movies that get profuse nominations, there are, these shining movies that just get one. And I'm not even talking about The Shining, which got 0 to my knowledge.
That's true.
But,
But yeah, that was the first time I had even heard of Hester Street, was looking her up when we covered Dog Day Afternoon.
yeah.
There we go. Of all the movies that we've ever discussed, I mean, we're into the 50s now of episodes that we've done. I can say with pretty great certainty that this is the one that I came in knowing the least about.
Yeah.
Maybe the closest to nothing.
Yeah.
Very, very little. I mean, I didn't even make a Carol Kane connection, to be
Yeah.
honest. So, yeah.
Nice alliteration there, too. Carol Kane connection.
Connection.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I did have not much of a relationship, but a little more of a sense of it going in. I remember hearing about it in a notable film-related circumstance, which was about 2.5 years before this recording. I attended a festival at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in Battery Park City. It was the inaugural New York Jewish Book Festival, and there was a panel there with the esteemed film critics A.O. Scott and Mark Harris.
Ayo.
And it was specifically a panel moderated by another big name in film criticism and among Jewish film critics at that, Annette Insdorf. And it was a discussion specifically about Jewish identity in film, where you can see the 3 thinkers are all talking about their thoughts on, their own Jewish identity in relation to their work and also how it manifests in film. And there is a moment in that conversation where they kind of break from what they were discussing before to discuss just how much Hester Street engages directly with Jewish identity in a way that very few films of its time did. And also pointing out that this is, unlike a lot of other films of its time, it is a debut feature from a female director, made independently too.
Yeah, I would say too that on top of it being a film about Jewish identity, it is so much a story about immigration and
Yeah.
the process of immigrating. And I think that the kind of confluence of those two things, it feels like a very unique film for that
Yeah.
reason.
Absolutely.
Totally. So, Emilio, what's this movie about?
That is a good question. I'll try to get into it. It's 1896 on Manhattan's Lower East Side, and we meet Yankel, an Eastern European immigrant who works as a seamster by day and attends social dance halls at night. He's been in America for a few years now and has prided himself on assimilating into this new culture, adopting the Americanized name Jake, and feels himself a bit too much with the ladies. And I say that because Yankel, or Jake, is married with a child, and he has no business getting busy with other women. Notably, Mamie, who's an immigrant herself, a dancer who takes some shine to him, and unlike many in her position, she's got her money right, so to speak. Things get interesting when Jake's wife, Gitl, and their son, immigrate to America and reunite with him in New York City with the intention of staying and being a family. What effect will Jake's double life have on his family? How will Gitl handle assimilating to a new way of life in America? And how do the people around them help or hurt their efforts to stay strong against a current of poverty and a lack of clear upward mobility? That is Hester Street.
That is Hester Street. Good job.
Now, it's our first time seeing this film. How did this movie strike us on first watch?
I thought this movie was really, really lovely. I found it very captivating. The only other film of Joan Micklin Silver's that I had seen was Bernice Bobs Her Hair, which I really love and has Shelley Duvall in it, and I can highly recommend if you have not seen. But so I came in with a generally positive impression of her as a director, but not really, because that's a shorter film, not really having a handle on her overall style and maybe what she can bring to different stories. And I think she made some really interesting choices in this that I'll probably get into later. But I highly recommend this.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I have not seen Bernice Bobs Her Hair, which by the timeline, it must have been the project that followed Hester Street.
I believe so.
But yeah, I really loved this film too. I'm impressed by how it manages to balance a pretty straightforward core plot. I did not find it hard to follow, but how it balances that core plot with what feel like very vivid details of a period that none of us have lived through.
Yeah.
And the film is praised for its accuracy in depicting the Lower East Side in 1896. This film was made with the help of the Jewish Museum.
This is very true.
Even if nobody who made the film was alive for that time, they still had some very dependable resources for it.
For sure.
There's just an innate thrill in seeing that time depicted at all. And I think that, in reading a little bit about the production of this film, that Joan Micklin Silver actively wanted to make the movie as an engagement with Jewish identity at a time when, not only were other filmmakers not doing it, but her own parents. They seemed, I would guess that they took more of the assimilation path, that they didn't talk much about their own identity. This is also, it's made in the years following the Holocaust too. So I'm sure that is a significant consideration as well.
That nugget puts an interesting spin on Crossing Delancey for me.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's, honestly, like while watching Crossing Delancey, I didn't think much of that, but you're right.
Yeah.
Like also just narratively, it's a tight 90 minutes. It feels very easy to watch in the sense that you can, in terms of timing, you can fit it in easily, but I think that for a viewer, it flows really well too. I think the moments that the movie chooses to portray, I think are very well chosen.
Yeah, sure. I would agree.
Yeah.
How did you feel about this movie, Emilio?
So regular listeners might know that at the time of this recording and maybe the prep for our discussion, my home is currently being picked apart by a puppy who has made a lot more havoc and disruption to our already existing disruption at night. I tried watching this movie in 2 parts late at night. I was pretty drowsy. This is a terrible idea. I'm going to say this because this movie, while I would agree with you, is actually like a pretty breezy movie.
Yeah.
Is very quiet.
Yeah.
It has a few sets. It has a handful of characters. There's a lot of Yiddish, which is a language that I can't understand without subtitles. And there are considerable stretches of this movie that seem to owe a lot to silent film. I do think it's intentional. I think it's meant to kind of put the viewer back in that turn of the century place where motion pictures didn't have synchronous sound. But hot damn, this is a tricky movie to engage if you are perpetually tired. I'm just going to say that. and you're not really ready for it. I struggled a lot connecting with this movie until I saw it not drowsy. And when I did, I'm now like all in on this movie. I think it's
totally
really unique. I think it has some great performances. I think it's also like surprisingly touching. I was not ready, I think, for where this movie took me and where it left me at the very end. It's an interesting movie to see and consider. I think also in the wake of Honora, which is a movie that just recently won Best Picture. There's some weird similarities, I think, in the narrative.
I can see that.
Yeah, but I can't wait to get into this. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, and I think that as singular a movie as Hester Street is, I think part of why it resonates is that there are aspects of it that you can certainly relate to other movies, whether it be the immigrant experience or the importance of marriage in the plot. I was actually thinking of another movie we discussed, Carol, while watching Hester Street due to one rather similar scene involving divorce proceedings.
Yeah. I love how the divorce in this is portrayed. I find it really, really interesting.
I was going to say that for later, but I totally agree. I would include that amongst details that I kind of wasn't ready for. It took me places emotionally that I wasn't ready for.
Yeah, definitely.
It was like a backwards marriage.
Absolutely. I think the "Here is thy divorce" is one of the funniest parts of this movie. I think this movie is very subtly funny in a lot of spots, and it just, gives me so much even more respect for Joan Micklin Silver as the screenwriter for this. She has such a sharp wit, which I think you see consistently through this film, and the way that she stages the two of them and the "Here is thy divorce" papers physically, you must present them to the woman with her little hands held out. It's so funny.
Yeah, I was looking this up. My research could be faulty here, but it seems like around that time, this was actually a procedure that was done. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but Gitl, which was a religious proceeding where a man grants a divorce to their wife. Mm-hmm. You can feel in that moment too that there's a bit of unfairness in terms of who's left to do what.
But I really like how the scene also, I think Joan Micklin Silver's more modern sensibility and feminism, it also comes through in this scene because they tell her you have to accept this with your free will. That really stuck out to me.
Yes.
And Dougie was like, that seems more progressive than maybe how other divorces were happening at the time.
Yeah, this is true.
And notably, of course, we were not alive in 1896. We can't say this for certain.
Maybe you weren't. I'm
sorry. But the sense I got from watching the movie was that Joan Micklin Silver really does put a feminist spin on it without feeling as though she's altering the details of that time.
Yeah, totally.
That she's just kind of changing the emphasis.
Yeah, I think that's a really good take. So this film is based on a novella, which is called Gitl, A Tale of the New York Ghetto. Gitl is, I guess, the novella's version of Yankel, who is Jake. I'm sorry. Before I ask this question, we have to talk about his choice of Jake as a name. Not even Jacob.
He's going
Jake.
Full American slangy.
Because Jacob because Jacob would be too scriptural.
That was my thought, though, is that maybe Jacob would be a good halfway point.
No. I mean, you feel right away he's going full frat boy.
Yeah, to choose Jake and then choose Joey, which I also, again with the humor, I think even though it is very aggressive, him telling Gitl no, he's Joey now is also very funny.
Yeah, to me, I felt like the 70s were coming out in that moment. Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Yes, but this novella, Gitl,
A Tale of the New York Ghetto, is the novella that this film is based on. And it's centered around Jake's perspective rather than Gitl's, which I found very interesting that Joan Micklin Silver chose to adapt this story and kind of change who our main focus was. Despite this change in point of view, it seems like the plot itself, from reading about the novella, seemed kind of identical, but just with this slight change in perspective. So even though I assume none of us have actually read this novella, did either of you
I have not, no.
I have not.
We're film watchers. We're we'll watch all the films in preparation for this, but we will not read this novella.
That's true.
I would have if I had heard about it more than 2 days ago. But how do we think the shift to Gitl's point of view affects the themes of this story? How do you guys think it would have read differently if we were focused more on Jake?
In heavy air quotes.
Well, to start considering that, of course, I think of Gitl's introduction in the story, but more broadly, the opening chapter of the movie.
Yeah.
Because Gitl is not present for the first about 20 minutes of the movie.
Yes.
It's Jake's story up to that point. And watching it, it's, when you know a little bit about it going in, there's that simple question of, when's Carol coming in?
Yeah, it's like I thought the same thing, that it's almost like the film kind of tricks you into thinking that Jake is going to be the main character.
Right. It's almost like doing the Fargo trick to you.
Or the Psycho trick.
Yeah.
Or a Desperate Living.
There you
Or
go.
the Brutalist is slightly different, but that's one that Dougie brought up where his wife does not come in until pretty far into the film.
Right.
I could totally see Brady Corbet being like Hester Street. I definitely watched that. It was definitely an influence. Yeah.
Yeah, and Brady Corbet, who, as far as I'm aware, is not Jewish, having that as an influence. Way to go. This is hypothetical. But anyway, yeah, so Hester Street does have that interesting narrative maneuver there. But I sort of felt like, not just because it's Carol Kane and she's such a great actress, but I kind of felt like as soon as she entered, I felt the shifting of the reins of the story right away. And I don't mean in the sense of like agency of characters, because Yankel, or Jake, I mean, he remains autonomous throughout, and he's also a much worse side of him comes out once you see him and Gitl together. But in terms of the emotional core of the story, I really felt like the shift was immediate.
Yeah, and I think that it causes you to become a little disoriented in the same kind of way that Gitl and Yosela must be feeling, being new to New York. I think it shifts perspective in the same way that they have to shift perspective as new immigrants.
Yeah, you get the sense of the newness of the place. And I feel like this is kind of when, like Emilio, you mentioned earlier, Hester Street being a quiet movie. And I feel like once Gitl comes into the picture, that's when it really starts to become a quieter movie. Because, I mean, like quieter, there's quiet scenes earlier on as well, but you have more scenes as she gets settled into the apartment, where you kind of just see her quietly taking in her surroundings, even just doing simple tasks like setting the table for dinner or things like that. Or also when you get to see like her conversations with Bernstein later on, there's a different tone that they have to the conversations that Jake has with Bernstein.
I think because Jake views both of them in a very similar way, that they're both still holding on to a lot of traditions from the old country that he really wants to put aside. And so I think he treats them similarly.
Totally.
Yeah.
It interests me too that as much as you get the character perspective shift, the whole story's still set in New York.
Yeah.
You only see them once they exist in the same general area, and you don't get any flashbacks to Eastern Europe or anything like that.
I wanted to jump in and push back ever so slightly on your question. And maybe point of view, maybe my interpretation of that is a little different, but when Carol Kane's Gitl comes into the picture, I feel like the focus becomes much bigger. I would agree that there's like an emotional core to the film that becomes very different. But I was not prepared for how much of an ensemble film I felt this movie became. And I felt like her story became as equal, I felt, in many ways to Jake's, but that other characters were developed in kind of interesting ways. And so by putting more of a focus, I would say, on Gitl's emotional journey through the film, I think it allows the movie to be a lot bigger. And I don't know, or to incorporate more, I should say, about other immigrant experiences.
I totally agree with you. I think that I really love how we do get to know. I don't have these character names in front of me, and I totally should. I mean, obviously we get a little bit with Mamie. I love Mrs. Kowarski. She's
love her.
Fantastic. Doris Roberts is Mrs. Kowarski, who, when she's initially introduced, you have no idea how central she's going to be.
Exactly.
I think that's part of why I think of it kind of as Carol Kane. She is so central, and Gitl as a character is so central to the narrative. Mrs. Kowarski is able to integrate into this story because of the connection that she builds with Gitl.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's good.
During one notable scene in the movie, the theme of assimilation and the question of whether or not to do it is an important aspect of Hester Street. And, when you see how Jake approaches assimilation, I mean, I think he's much more almost aggressive about it. Or not almost, he's totally aggressive.
No, he definitely,
He's totally aggressive
really
in certain scenes about his vision that his family should assimilate. Whereas a little further into the narrative, after he makes, after his initial interactions that establish that, Mrs. Kowarski, she has a conversation with Gitl where, she brings the concept up in a more congenial way.
Yeah.
That you sense as a viewer that Gitl is more turned on to the idea after that interaction.
She gives her the makeover scene, right? Yeah.
Which I love the makeover scene.
Oh yeah, me too. I thought it was sweet.
It's sweet. And one of the things that I like about it is that Mrs. Kowarski still, I think, respects Gitl's boundaries and allows her to kind of take these steps at her own pace.
Yes.
Totally.
And wants her input throughout this makeover. She comes in and she's like, oh, here's my best hat. And what do you think? And Gitl's like, do you have one with feathers?
Yeah.
Which I love because Gitl is able to get some input here. But even the hat, she still has her wig on.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
Under the hats.
Good point.
Because that is what's going to make her still feel safe, and she still has this boundary where she doesn't want to show her hair yet, and we don't see her hair until later, and of course that's very traumatizing.
That does not end well.
But I think that why Mrs. Kowarski is successful in convincing Gitl to assimilate is because she emphasizes how it can benefit Gitl as a person. Is that it's not simply something to do because other people say it's something to do. It's for her own betterment.
I think she's also trying to really show Gitl that there are different ways that a Jewish woman can present in America, and Gitl is so worried about. She doesn't want to leave her old traditions behind. She says she doesn't want to look like a Gentile. You get this a few times, and Mrs. Kowarski is the person that says to her, well, what do I look like? She says, I'm just as pious as you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, this assimilation doesn't make you any less Jewish.
Yeah.
There's a realism that Mrs. Kowarski has in her attitude and her worldview that contrasts Jake's idealism. But in thinking about where Jake's worldview separates from that of other characters, I'm inclined to go back even to that first interaction that we see on camera between him and Gitl when he is showing up to meet her at what is ostensibly a port.
Yeah, Ellis Island or something.
Yeah, Ellis Island.
Nice.
But you kind of see the ambivalence about the relationship in his face.
It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal when you watch it. Yeah.
Yes, and reminder to the listeners, we're not talking about The Brutalist, but this is a brutal moment.
Yes, this is true.
And there's a few shots of Gitl before you see her eyes meet Jake's, but you can see when they do make eye contact, you can see her devotion right away.
Yeah, even before they make eye contact, when she spots him, she's immediately overjoyed and is jumping up and running to him and saying to her son, oh, don't you remember your daddy?
Yeah.
And then he sees her and he doesn't feel any of that.
Yeah.
It breaks your heart.
Yeah.
It's tricky. I think this movie does everything it can to paint what Jake does in a light where you can maybe give him a little bit of grace because it's such a big life change.
Yeah.
And you use the word idealism. There's an idealism that he sees in being American. There's also an idealism in the kind of person and the kind of success that he can have for himself.
Yeah.
Or that he can pass on to his family. A little questionable there. But it's tough.
It's tough.
It's real tough. Yeah.
And I think part of my question that I guess would have to be answered by me actually reading the novella is if he is portrayed more sympathetically in the novella. Because I think when I was mentioning her POV, I think the idea is that we're on her side for, I think, most of the film. And as you said, we sympathize with his actions, but we ultimately want her to come out okay.
Absolutely.
More than we want him to come out okay.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And when I say that, I really just mean I actually think this is a strength of the film that he isn't this completely irredeemable person.
Exactly.
That you can see how this happened.
Yeah.
I think it's tied to pretty deep personal faults within him, but you can see how one thing led to another.
Yeah, you see the thread.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I think fairly early on, you want good things
Yeah.
for Gitl.
And I think
Yeah.
a film that cares less about Gitl could very much present her as he sees her. And I don't think the film presents Gitl in the way that Jake sees her, where she's so green. She doesn't know any better. She's just like stuck in her old ways and she doesn't want to change. And he deserves something bigger and better. And she can't give that to him. You don't ever feel that way in the film, but you get the sense that he feels that way.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, there's even a scene later on after a heated argument between Gitl and Jake where Mrs. Kowarski says to Jake scoldingly, I'm paraphrasing, but like, you do not know how good a wife you have.
Right.
Which is so interesting because he also does allude to that to other people sometimes.
Yes.
You know, like he says
does.
to Mamie when they're fighting, you're not worth my wife's little finger. He says to the dance hall guy,
Joe, I think is his name.
Joe,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
The same thing.
Yep.
When he finds out that Joe has proposed to Mamie, he's like, neither of you are worth my wife's little finger. Like, I just want to go home and have dinner, enjoy my little wife, and play with my boy chick.
Uh-huh.
And so he wants to present like he has this kind of perfect, ideal life.
Right.
But obviously it does not bring him happiness.
I
Right.
feel like Jake has a lot of admiration for the institution of marriage, but kind of a shallow view of the thing itself, of the experience. I think that to him, it means a lot to be married, like to have that as an aspect of your status, but that he doesn't really put the same kind of thought into all aspects of the marriage itself.
It's all about what a woman can, or a marriage can do for him, what a marriage can do for the man,
right?
And what he can get out of it.
I would also say that it extends to fatherhood for him.
Totally.
You see that being a present and attentive father is only something he feels comfortable with if he sees his son reflecting the values that he wants to put out in the world.
If his son is Joey.
Exactly. If his son is Joey and is embracing the kinds of things that he himself wants to embrace and wants to see his family embrace.
Wants to play baseball.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, too, I mean, that feels very shallow as we were talking about with marriage. It's like it's wanting all of the outward appearance of something desirable without all of the hard work.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, as you were describing that, I thought of the scene where, it's pretty early on after Gitl and Yosela have arrived to America, where Jake is cutting off his peyos, which are the little braids.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gitl is screaming.
Yeah, she's fighting with all her strength to stop that. But then once Jake actually has cut those braids off, he says, "Look at him, a little Yankee." And I mean, the wordplay there is,
very intentional.
Very on the nose. I mean, Yankee because his given name is Yankel.
Born to assimilate.
And I mean, skipping a little bit ahead to the end of the film, to that divorce scene that we described earlier, when Jake is asked his name, he answers Yankel.
Well, at first he says Jake.
Yeah.
And the rabbi looks at him like,
homie.
Come on.
Yeah.
I meant your real name.
Yeah.
Or maybe in this case, Mishpoche.
Here we go.
Yankel. But then, on the flip side, you have Gitl in this garb that would have been reserved for nobility in the old country.
Yeah.
That
she, you see that she has assimilated in her own way.
Right. And she brings up the nobility thing quite a bit.
Yeah.
Almost in an aspirational kind of way.
Right.
Yeah. And you were talking about how names and identity come across in the divorce scene. Well, a name does also really impact Gitl in that they're talking about her son, and she's the one that then finally calls him Joey.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting choice in the screenplay because she's really fought this until this point. And it kind of shows, paired with, as you said, like the change in her appearance, that she does want to assimilate to an extent. And she wants her son to be able to, he's very young.
Yeah.
He's not going to remember much from the old country. She wants him to be fully accepted in America. And I think she's not sure what exactly she needs to do to allow him that opportunity. And I think she's kind of like, well, this is like the one thing we'll take from Jake.
She wants it to be on her terms too,
Yeah.
or on terms that she's able to agree with somebody else on, which is not the situation or dynamic that Jake presents.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit earlier about how this film does sort of widen the scope, I think, from the initial story. Coming into Hester Street with next to no knowledge of the film, I was really struck by the extent to which immigration was this engine of change. Most characters in this movie are dealing with a great amount of change. Even lesser ones, I think, seem to be at some sort of a crossroads. And I'm curious, we talked about how we all agree that we want the best for Gitl.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if there were any stories from other characters that were also resonant, or maybe a story that like surprised you, or you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that one to land the way it did.
There totally were. And the first one who comes right to my mind is Bernstein.
Yeah, same here.
I
After
think
Gitl, he's one of the other most sympathetic characters, and Mrs. Kowarski, I think. But you really want Bernstein to come out okay by the end of this film.
Yeah, and it's like I think even before you consider the performance of the actor who played
Mel
him,
Howard,
whose name is Mel Howard, I just really like the way the character is written too, like his place in the story as not a member of the family, but a coworker of Jake's, who Jake is nice enough to offer lodging to.
I think he also needs the money.
He needs the money, yes.
He needs the money. I think he also, he kind of likes having somebody who he sees as under him or lower than him around to make him feel better about himself.
Sure, but they are equal at the beginning of the story.
They're presented as equal, but I think Jake
says that he makes more money.
Exactly.
That's true. It's $12 to
24
6
or 6. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That is true.
It's 24 rubles.
That's right. I'm sorry, I got my conversions wrong there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that time, they were probably still a little bit scrambled about that themselves. Just thinking in terms of one when the other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's why when Jake says to Gitl, like, I make $12 an hour, and she's kind of like, oh, great. And he's like, 24 rubles. Yeah. And she's like, oh, yeah.
Now
nice.
you're talking.
But Bernstein also is a different type of old country person because he is a yeshiva student. He's a man of the Torah. And, he's someone who would have been considered in a higher class in the shtetl that they all came from back in, I think it's meant to be, I forget if it's Russia or it's Poland.
I think they're meant to be from Russia.
Yes.
I don't know about Bernstein.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's specified, but I think that Yankel and Gitl are from Russia.
Yes.
Jake.
Yeah. And Bernstein, we don't even learn his first name. It's just the mononym we're given.
Maybe it's Bernstein.
Maybe, yeah. Bern space Steen.
Yes.
Yeah. But, I mean, that he is...
I don't know why that took me so long to get. All right. But I was thinking like Bernstein Bears for whatever reason.
Yeah, maybe his last name is Bears and Bernstein is actually his first name.
Okay, sorry, continue.
But that he would have been considered in a higher class in the old country, and he is just put down into the working class in the new country.
Right.
He's an important counterpoint, whether it be to that peddler who is his boss in the sewing shop, or to someone like Jake too, who really who is very aspirational. And Bernstein, I mean, you get the sense that his being in America is more practical. Right. But then when you see the arc that develops between him and Gitl in particular, if we're going to talk about changes that were really striking in the film, that scene towards the end where he is packing up his books, he's ready to leave, and then the love that has been brewing between the two finally comes out into the open. That
I think I audibly gasped.
It's so sweet. And she's pretty bold.
Yeah. Yeah, I am saying yes.
She's like, what if that person said yes? Sorry, continue.
I mean, I watched this movie 2 times, and the first time I saw that scene, I don't think I audibly gasped, but I had the experiential equivalent of it.
Yeah.
I was like giddy. I don't remember the
Giddy
last
for
time. Exactly. Yeah. I don't remember the last time.
Can that be the title of this episode? I'm sorry. Giddy for Gitl.
I definitely felt giddy for Gitl in that moment. I felt giddy for them. I can't remember the last time in a movie where I didn't realize that I wanted these people to get together.
Yeah.
It kind of snuck up on me.
You're like, these
Yeah.
crazy kids.
I can think of a possible last time you might have felt that, which was in a movie that I immediately thought of in that scene, Clueless.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although,
Maybe
you know what?
I love Josh.
Yeah. Well, it's because, but more broadly, like the thing I want to point to there is something that I pointed to in that same episode about Amy Heckerling's films, which is this idea of compulsory demisexuality
Sure.
in films, which, to be totally clear, it's not a criticism of any movie that it's in. It's just a thing that happens. It's a tendency that Hester Street certainly falls into.
Yeah. These two are presented as having a lot in common.
Yes.
And he's presented as having a certain amount of respect for her that Jake does not.
Mhm.
Right.
He doesn't want her to change. And even when she does make certain changes to her appearance, we don't see him judge her for it.
Right.
So I think that even if the film doesn't necessarily set up like them kind of watching the other from across the room with like hard eyes, it still sets them up as, I think, being way more compatible
Right.
than she is with Jake.
Right.
I'd love to come back to that compatibility thing, but I'd ask you, Madeline, I don't know did you have any characters or storylines that you were like, wow, I was surprised it
Yeah, I
did
think
something to me?
Bernstein was definitely the one that came to my mind outside of Gitl, who is obvious. Some other characters, we talked about Mrs. Kowarski a little bit already. We have Mamie, who's interesting, I think, to talk about.
I want to talk about
yeah,
her.
let's talk
Yeah.
about
I
Mamie.
wanna
guess.
talk
what
about
do you
her.
think of Mamie, Emilio?
Yeah, well, that was the character that surprised me the most.
Yeah.
I was definitely giddy for Gitl.
And you were fine for Mamie Fine.
I was.
You're like,
yes.
I felt fine.
It was. I wasn't as on board right away, but I think the final notes of her character, I think, kind of like brought me back around in some weird way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can see throughout the movie that while she feels some sort of attraction and she's drawn to Jake, that she has a lot of reservations about the fact that this guy.
As she should.
Exactly. Yeah. And she makes them known. So I think in some respects, she acquits herself a little bit. I think on that front, like she's not a completely immoral person when it comes to like who she wants to hook up with.
I am like, what does she see in him?
I agree. Although, so I'll say this. So
He can
I
dance.
think that there is a part of her that sees somebody else that has the same kind of mindset about assimilation and this kind of a shared origin story, I guess, in terms of being immigrants and also this shared idea of like, we're in America now. Like
Yeah.
we're ready to change something about ourselves in order to get to this next level, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And I also love that the last notes of her are very compassionate and level-headed ones
Yeah.
of being like, look, we gave a bunch of money to your ex-wife and it's cool. We
Yeah.
will find a way to
We have
save
each
up and do
other.
it again. And
Yeah.
we have each other. And we want good things for Gitl, I think. But I was surprised how much I wanted good things for her at the end.
For
I'm
Mamie.
like, Jake, don't screw this up.
Yeah.
That's my fear is that I don't trust Jake farther than I can throw him. And I think that he has ulterior motives in his wooing of Mamie. Obviously, I see why he's drawn to her. She's very charming. She's very beautiful. She is very different than Gitl. And she's very desired, too. We know she's been propositioned, at least
yeah.
by Joe,
Yep.
the dance hall guy.
Totally.
So I see why he's drawn to her. Something that struck me on the rewatch is when he is with Joe in the bar about halfway through the film, and Joe's telling him that he's proposed to Mamie. And he also says to Jake that Mamie has saved up $300.
Right.
And then skip ahead a while after Jake has left Gitl, and he and Mamie are like on a boat. They're on a ferry, maybe?
Mm.
I don't know why I viewed this scene as like they're on the ferry. They may have not been.
Okay.
Anyway, the two of them are chatting and he's like, Gitl's not going to agree to divorce. And she's like, oh, but money. And he's like, I don't have any money. And she's like, I have money. And he's like, really? Like he plays dumb there
He does.
in a way that I really don't like
Right.
because it makes me think that so much of his motivation to be with her is because he knows she has this money saved.
Yeah, and see, for me, I consider that strikes against him and not necessarily Mamie.
No, I agree. I'm not striking against her. I agree that I want something good for her, and I don't trust him.
Right.
I don't think he can give that to her.
Right.
Because by the end, we know that she's very frugal, and they're walking to City Hall. She's in her wedding dress. She's in her veil.
Yep.
And he's like, maybe can't we, like, do we have to walk all the way there? And she's like, we can't pay for a carriage. And he's like, but we could take the subway. And she's like, hey, that's 10 cents that I'm trying to save. Like, I just feel like they're going to continue to butt heads
it's very possible.
financially.
Yeah.
Where she's like, I know how to save money. I saved a lot of money on my own. And now this guy's here and he's constantly sucking up money like a vacuum.
Right.
So I don't trust Jake.
And that type of conversation that they have at the end of the movie is the kind of thing that just with different means of transportation is still very much a thing today.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You take the subway or take the Uber.
Yeah.
But yeah, and another notable scene with Mamie Fine and a notable scene in the whole movie is when she and Gitl are first made aware of each other. When, she knocks on the door and, is not even aware that Gitl and Yosela have arrived in America, and then Jake is really put in that awkward position of, like,
he had it coming.
He
totally
so had it coming.
did.
But he's just kind of like, I didn't expect to see you all in the same room.
Yeah.
But also what struck me about that scene was that you see in how Mamie regards Gitl that there's no disdain there.
Exactly.
That, there's no jealousy. There's an understanding right away. I think there's shock, but there's no disrespect. And I think that a different person might have reacted differently to that.
Right. I clocked that too. Yeah. And I felt like all that factored into the Mamie soup.
Yeah.
So it's still like, she's very composed about it, but still has the right feelings.
And she's very nice to Yosela. I do think it's weird that she asks him to kiss her, but she is very nice to him. So that's good, I guess.
That's like one of those
of the time
and like kind of cultural, there are things that flew, I think, back in the day that, like, I don't really think have carried over, but
asking children for a kiss and then giving them money.
Yeah, but it's that period detail.
Mm-hmm.
But to return to the relationship that blossoms between Gitl and Bernstein, I really noticed it more, like the development of it more on the second viewing. Going back to that scene, the I am saying yes scene towards the end of the movie, part of the surprise is like, oh, there's love going on. Okay. And I maybe I was just a little oblivious the first time while watching, but I didn't know if that conclusion was going to be met.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was going to conclude in that, but I feel like I did pick up on it just because it's, I think, unusual for men and women to be friends in this time and in this community.
Yeah.
And I think that they have formed a pretty strong friendship that I think is kind of unusual.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, the foundation for something more to happen.
Yeah. Totally.
I did not catch this on the first of my drowsy viewings, but the second time coming back to it, they do kind of foreshadow it. There is that conversation
I know the moment you're going to think
in the hallway where they're leaving their job, and I think Fanny, she like comes down the stairs and
it's like another woman that
exactly,
Jake's been
involved with. And Jake is kind of razzing Bernstein for like being too picky or like not being able to kind of find somebody. And he literally says, he's like, well, what kind of woman are you interested in? It's funny. It does not feel at all like it's telegraphing anything.
Yeah. And at that point we haven't even met Gitl.
Yeah, no, but I think on a rewatch, you're like, that's definitely there to like plant that seed in our minds that maybe somebody will appear.
Yeah, and I think Jake constantly razzing him throughout the film, like, why can't you find somebody, just go back to the marriage broker, also adds to this.
Yeah, but then later on, once Gitl and Bernstein have gotten to know each other a little bit, there's one conversation that they have around the middle of the film where at the end of it, Gitl stands up from the table, walks somewhere else in the room, and you see Bernstein's eyes follow her for a moment, and he kind of stops himself and he's like, no, I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you're not supposed to look at women's little fingers.
Yeah. Right. And he talks about how that was one of the reasons he Was it he came to the United States?
Yeah,
or
he basically
Yeah.
had to flee.
he had to flee, or he felt some sort of pressure that he wasn't able to sort of reach the heights he wanted.
The
Or-
purity
yeah.
Yeah.
that is
No.
expected of somebody of his like stature.
For sure.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and then
Yeah.
well, like looking ahead in Joan Micklin Silver's filmography to Crossing Delancey, there's a little moment in that movie where the main character, who's played by Amy Irving, she's wearing this kind of short dress that her bubby comments on as she's like, pull that down, like don't show your thighs like that. Like that goes back to that sense of past traditions that are more vividly portrayed in Hester Street. Speaking of where this film is placed in time, so it's set in 1896, but it comes out in 1975. And when you're thinking about New York movies of the 1970s, I mean, this is a very distinct era for both the city and its status in film. Still, Hester Street kind of has no other movie of that time and setting that you can compare it to. It's very singular. But it also, in terms of the time it's about, it's a period film that comes out in a time when a lot of other films have a contemporary setting. And also, as I've mentioned before, this is a movie that's very pointedly about Jewish identity at a time when, there were Jewish filmmakers, there were plenty of them. But let's talk a little bit about that. How do you think Hester Street relates to or breaks away from other films of its time, or maybe other things that came after it too? What kind of influence do you think it's had?
One of the things that jumped out to me is, and I was not ready for this movie to be so much about divorce, but I think the idea of divorce was a really strong thing in the 1970s.
True.
I think it was becoming a lot more popular, and I think it was something you were seeing a lot more of.
Yeah.
Not so much at the turn of the century. It was funny. I was not really expecting it, but this movie did remind me a lot of Kramer versus Kramer, because that movie also sucks you into a very dysfunctional relationship. And you watch it break apart and they go through divorce and you come out with some questions, but a surprising amount of empathy for almost everybody in the movie.
Yeah.
And Kramer versus Kramer comes out about 4 or 5 years after this movie does. That was something that you weren't really seeing so much in movies, but you were about to.
Yeah.
And I think right after Kramer versus Kramer, you get like movies like Ordinary People. That's another one that's very much kind of quietly about divorce and a marriage dissolving. Another film, Starting Over, which is like kind of a funnier version of that, but also deeply about that. And we discussed E.T., that movie came out also directly after. And that movie very indirectly is extremely about divorce.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing that jumped out to me. I have more to say, but I'll let somebody else talk.
Totally. I mean, a genre that a lot of directors go back to that is very, continues to be, I don't want to use sucked dry, but so many New York films that come out in this time period are kind of like gritty crime dramas.
Yeah.
Obviously, like we talked Godfather 2, so like we got the Godfather movies. We talked Dog Day Afternoon. Like you get Taxi Driver, you get Mean Streets. Like you get just one after another. And this film is so starkly different from these other films tonally.
Yeah, totally.
And this film, it was, as you alluded to up top, they had to self-finance this film. They had to self-distribute this film. From the perspective of a studio, this film didn't and doesn't seem marketable. It's in black and white. It has actors who are mostly unknown at the time. It's the director's debut. She's a woman. It's a period piece. And its characters come from this very narrow demographic telling this very specific kind of story. So I think that these are the characteristics of this film that make it so impactful for me, because it's so different from anything else that's coming out at that time.
Yeah. And, in reading about all of the odds that were against Joan Micklin Silver and company in making this film, I mean, I think, you really have to praise her sticking with her own creative ingenuity in making it, and really to use an appropriate term, the chutzpah that goes with that.
Of course.
This is going to sound like a strained comparison, but one of the other debuts from around that general time in film history that it in some ways sounds remarkably similar to is Eraserhead. Which
I mean,
not about immigrant experience, but it is
Black and white.
It's made on a low budget.
Sure.
It's
Independent
a strained kind of family with a young child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
family relations.
And David Lynch, of course, throughout his career, I hate that I'm saying was. I'm so sad about that.
Oh,
but
bummer.
that he was someone who always, whenever like the business side of filmmaking started to get in the way of his creativity, he would not have it. That he always was just proceeding with his own vision. I'm going to do what I want. That, with that kind of audacity that I think shows in Joan Micklin Silver's work here too.
While we're talking about Eraserhead, I have to say, Julian already knows this, but Dougie and I had kind of a gift of the Magi situation where we each independently bought the Criterion release of Eraserhead from Orbit DVD in Asheville within like 2 days of each other.
Oh my.
And I'm just curious if the good people at Orbit happened to notice that they were shipping the same movie to the same Brooklyn address within like 2 days from each other. So we have 2 copies now if anyone wants one.
We have established in past episodes that you are open to the idea of lending the weird movies.
Yes, particularly if I have 2 copies.
There we go.
Yeah. But yeah, so thinking about this, this film coming out at the time that it does, on some level, I imagine that Joan Micklin Silver, there was something that wasn't audacious about wanting to make this film too. It was just simply interest, that there was purely, this is a great story and she wants to tell it.
Yeah. I'm really fascinated in general by female writer directors of this time. I think you see a couple of them pop up. We've discussed in passing before Elaine May.
Yep.
There's also like Barbara Loden, who wrote and directed and starred in Wanda, which is another really incredible film. You get people like the documentarian Barbara Koppel. Yeah. And then, in the 80s, you get like these comedy writer directors, Amy Heckerling, we talked about, Martha Coolidge. I got to say, though, like Joan Micklin Silver was absolutely not on my radar, like 100%. I really wanted to see a couple of her movies before we got into talking. And one thing I'll say is, so I saw Crossing Delancey. I also saw Chilly Scenes of Winter, which I loved. It was really, really good. And I just think there's a general sensitivity, and I mean this as a huge compliment, that Joan Micklin Silver shows her characters, and there's a realness that she grounds them in. I think we were alluding a little bit to that. But at the risk of maybe generalizing here, I think a lot of female directors from this time really admirably balance the scales and provide three-dimensional depictions of both men and women in a way that you don't always see with men.
Yeah.
And I think Silver definitely does that. I would say from what I've seen in her career more broadly, but especially in Hester Street.
Yeah, totally. I was reading through, as I referred to in our previous episode on Frances Ha, the Jason Bailey book, Fun City Cinema. I skimmed through its chapter on New York movies in the 1970s, and there is no mention of Hester Street. There is a lot more about actually the central movie of that chapter. There's each chapter will kind of take one movie and focus on it as a centerpiece, and that film for the 70s is Taxi Driver. Understandably, when you see what's out there, there's a lot more, as you were referring to, Madeline, of these gritty movies about New York and things where like you have like cops as the main characters, and also these that in spite of the fact that the city was in disrepair at that time, that you have all these films that keep displaying that image in spite of the fact that the city wants to shed it. It's kind of a catch-22 of like, yes, we want more film production, but we don't want our city to look like this to the rest of the world. And I think that
maybe hire a rat czar.
Yeah. But Hester Street, I think, one of the notable ways that it contrasts all of this is not just in the time in which it is set. Like, it's portraying a time that I think is very easy to look at as like kind of a cesspool itself.
Yeah.
And it struck me as a pretty positive image of that time. Like, you don't see, like, there's not a focus on like urban squalor or anything. Like when you see Jake showing Yosela or Joey out on what is ostensibly Hester Street for the first time, it's a fun scene.
Yeah.
That, it's exciting to see all of the carts and the people selling things on the street and the other kids playing.
Yeah. Hopping on the back of those wagons.
Yeah.
Reminded me of Annie.
Yeah, Yep.
Yeah.
The scene where she finds the dog.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's to me one of the most notable things about Hester Street is that not only that it chooses this in the film context, the distinct setting, but it also like portrays it in a way that I think really doesn't play into stereotypes of that time.
For sure.
And feels more real because of it. But also to go back to the portrayal of Jewish identity in Hester Street. As I've mentioned, this is a movie that engages with it head on at a time when many other films by Jewish filmmakers do not. I guess for better or worse, the most prominent Jewish filmmaker of the 1970s would have to be Woody Allen. Thinking back to the book Fun City Cinema, I think of a quote from Martin Scorsese about Woody Allen, which maybe has more to do with class, but he said that, yes, they're both New Yorkers, but when Scorsese watched a Woody Allen film, he felt like he was watching something foreign. That, it's an upper crusty world. And also for Joan Micklin Silver to deal with working class Jewish characters, I think is a bold move in that situation too.
Yeah. This is when Steven Spielberg is really, tapping into like some of his biggest films come out around this time and shortly thereafter.
Right. And, this is 1975, so it's contemporary with Jaws.
Exactly.
Yes. But notably, I don't really feel like Spielberg movies are about Jewishness.
Yeah,
until later, I think, in his career.
That was actually, I think, going to be my point is, as you said, a lot of Jewish filmmakers aren't engaging with their identity at this time. I think Spielberg is the classic example of that.
Right.
That he really doesn't dive deeply into that part of himself until The Fabelmans, and even then he doesn't cast many Jewish actors in The Fabelmans. That was kind of controversial when the film was coming out.
Yeah, and it's, for me as a Jewish viewer, I don't personally mind that, but yes, it's an understandable point of contention. Going back to that panel that I attended with Annette Insdorf, Mark Harris, and A.O. Scott, someone else who came up is Mike Nichols.
Yeah.
That he's someone he is a Jewish filmmaker, and at least at that time, not only is he not engaging with that in his film specifically, he doesn't really present outwardly as Jewish.
Like The Graduate feels so waspy.
It definitely does.
Even though Dustin Hoffman is a Jew too.
But that says something.
Right.
That Mike Nichols manages to make Dustin Hoffman feel so waspy.
Exactly. Yeah. For reference, Mike Nichols' birth name is Igor Mikhail Peshavsky.
Wow.
And so that says enough in itself.
That's some Jake level of
and this is someone who was born in the 1930s. So he, like Jake as a character would have been old enough to be his grandfather.
There we go.
So that assimilation, that sense of
unlikely shared universe. Continue.
So that sense of assimilation continued well beyond the time we see depicted in Hester Street.
Right.
But then as part of that same panel, then Mark Harris also mentioned that as time goes on, you see more filmmakers of a younger generation engaging more directly, and he specifically named Darren Aronofsky, the Safdies, and Noah Baumbach as some examples.
Yeah.
It's an interesting trend to consider that, like, with time, that becomes a more abundant thing. And I don't know if I have, like, personally answered that question of why that happens just yet, but it is something I wanted to put out there, and yet another detail that signifies why Hester Street is such a distinct film.
Totally.
Yeah. I think you can say in general that more and more diverse voices and stories are getting the platforms that they haven't gotten in the past. And that's not to diminish your point at all, but I think just a way to kind of just say that the world of cinema, I think, is embracing more than ever this idea of more mainstream stories, but having them be so specific. I think, Madeline, you brought up one of the things that you love so much about this movie and watching it was how specific it was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've said it before in, I think, a past episode, that sometimes the more specific a story is, the more universal it starts to become. Because there are core emotions that sometimes just need a very particular setting to come out. And those emotions are what audiences respond to.
Yeah.
And I also think for those of us who love to watch film and read books and just absorb stories, I think a lot of us want to be able to experience a lived experience that's different than our own.
Yeah.
So that we can learn about it and we can be exposed to something new. And I think that's part of what's so captivating about this story, is that it is, in its kind of reality, very different than like my day-to-day life.
Mine too, yeah.
So that's part of what made me want to engage with it.
Yeah, it really speaks to the movie's success in portraying that. that even before it got this restoration that's gone out in the last few years, it was already part of the Library of Congress in 2011, I think. How many praises can we sing for it? It is, really a wonderful movie.
Cool.
On
the subject of wonderful things, were there any notable moments or favorite small details that we want to shout out?
I really like Bernstein teaching Yosela.
I like that too.
Boom.
I think that's a really great scene.
It's really touching.
And it also has the funniest joke in the whole movie, which is when he drops, Yosela gets something right.
Yeah.
And Bernstein drops a little prize, treat for him and says, an angel sent it from heaven.
I freaking loved that moment. That's
so funny.
You know what though? I agree. It's funny. Honestly, the dad at the table here, I'm like 10 out of 10.
Totally.
Stepdadding
You're like,
in that moment.
I gotta try that.
Definitely. I know. I was taking notes.
Yes, agreed. I love that little moment too. Well, one detail, I would actually say this is not a little detail of the film, but it makes its way into a lot of little moments, is the amount of Yiddish that is spoken in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering how much Yiddish you speak.
Me?
Yeah.
Nothing conversational.
I assumed nothing conversational. I was just wondering if you picked up individual words in a way that I'm sure.
But actually,
Emilio and I did not.
I did pick up a few individual words, but I might attribute that more to my just doing a lot of German Duolingo over the last few years.
Close enough.
As opposed to familial reasons, though
Right.
that is certainly a valid consideration. I mean, there's certain words in Yiddish that I know because of family and not because of Duolingo. There's words that don't cross over. It's like Mishpoche, which is a broad word for community in Yiddish that I don't think has a German or similar language counterpart. I mean, admittedly, there's a little bit of cross-pollination of Hester Street and Crossing Delancey, having watched the two in close proximity. But there was a moment in Crossing Delancey where the bubby in that movie says to someone, "Verstehst?" which means, "Do you understand me?" And that's something that I knew from rudimentary German knowledge.
Got it.
But also, it's worth saying and acknowledging the presence of Yiddish in this movie that Carol Kane had to learn it for the role. She didn't speak it.
And something
Absolutely
that
crushing.
she crushes it. And I also think she crushes Gittl's learning of English. Because there's the scene where she basically knows no English at all. And she's asking Yosela, who I think has been getting more English from Jake, what is this called?
It's like stove or something.
Yeah. And so she's trying to pronounce words like stove and lunch
and table.
And table. It's like she's practicing that. And it feels very convincingly awkward coming out of her mouth.
Yeah.
But then as she gets more comfortable with English, her accent develops. It's not as heavy. I think that Carol Kane's really masterful in the journey we see with her learning English.
Totally. Well, one other little moment that I like that pertains to that character, Gitl, is that we talked a little bit about how for much of the movie, once she has arrived in America, she keeps her wig on instead of showing her natural hair. And that there's one scene where she wants to change her wig for a kerchief.
I have this exact
thing. This is a great moment.
Yes.
This is, I think we all three have. I wrote this one down.
Where, it's like she has told Jake that she wants to do this, and then he's kind of off to the side, and she gives him this little look. Can you please go away? I have to do this in private before he actually goes. And that was the moment I wanted to single out.
But then also,
you go for it.
Also, not only does he turn away, the camera pants away.
Yeah, you don't see her do
so
it.
So you don't see her do it. You do not see her real hair until she is ready to reveal it.
Right.
And that is, I think, such a woman's touch. I love it, and that you don't see her real hair until the really horrifying scene where Jake sees her real hair, which is very upsetting. But I still think it's a really very cool choice by the director.
I'm glad that all three of us clocked that one. You were talking about Crossing Delancey and the cross-pollinating of Crossing Delancey in this film. One of the notable moments that I just absolutely loved in this movie, just gave me just a huge smile on my face, was the street peddler.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Completely kills it. He's super charismatic. He doesn't overstay his welcome. He knows when it's time to pack up. He's pushy without being a jerk. I just love that it's just he's just a hustler out there trying to do his thing.
And he has everything in that bag.
But I love
Very
that
Mary Poppins.
He's got the Mary Poppins bag, but I love he's got that like gift of gab where he's like, "What do you need? Oh, it's that. I got you. Oh, it's this other thing.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I got you covered." Like, I just love that.
Yeah.
Apart from just his hustling nature that I just found so charming, the other thing that I really love about that scene is you get this really specific reveal of Gittl's naivete asking for a love potion.
Yeah.
Which I found both really sweet and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And then like she says she's joking, but it just like doesn't when she initially asks clock is a joke at all.
No.
And so you're kind of like, well, is she? She doesn't seem like it was joking. I think she's kind of playing it off because she's embarrassed
exactly.
But
And
also,
you feel her embarrassment.
That
Yeah.
hustler has an answer though.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, there is like I forget exactly what he says, but he has something he's ready to offer.
Yeah, he's like, here's my love potion.
Not that it's gonna work, but like
but he's got something.
Yeah.
Who knows what's in it? One of
I-
those things that whenever somebody asks for anything that's like liquid based, he's like, oh, here you go.
Yeah.
I think Mrs. Kowarski comes in and shuts him
Thank
down.
goodness.
Yeah, definitely. But you know what that reminded me of? And I'll go to Crossing Delancey. That movie you were talking about, like a woman's touch. The scene in that movie where the like street denizen walks into the pizza parlor.
Yes.
That scene kind of like stops the movie in this really particular way.
Yeah.
I don't think it happens quite the same way in Hester Street. I do love that there's this character that normally society would just cast out that is introduced into the film and is shown to interact with your main character and reveal something about their interiority. And I just love that. I love that that happened in both of those films.
Totally. Yeah. Very well said.
I really appreciated Gittl's appreciation for New York water. She was like, even though water tastes better in America.
Yeah. We got good tap water here.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she hasn't even had the bagels, I assume.
Just wait.
And then I also like the lawyer. I forget the entire line, but he says to her, or as we say, irregardless.
As we say, irregardless.
Yes. Yeah.
Again, this movie is very funny.
Yeah.
You don't expect this movie to be as funny as it is.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, this is as good a time as any to shift over to our interview with Sharyn Rothstein. We had such an amazing time getting to talk to her and pick her brain about Hester Street. I think we just got a lot more appreciation for the film. And on the other side of this interview, don't worry, we do get to our unlikely shared universes. So sit back and we hope you enjoy this deeper dive into Hester Street. Our special guest today is an accomplished writer, teacher, and playwright. For TV, she was a writer-producer for the wildly successful show Suits, also for Orphan Black Echoes, and is currently a writer-producer for Suits LA, whose first season can currently be seen on NBC and streamed on Peacock. She has penned several award-winning plays like By the Water, The Right to Be Forgotten, Tell Me I'm Not Crazy, Landladies, All the Days, amongst several others. Notably for this discussion, she recently penned a stage adaptation of the film Hester Street, the film that we just finished discussing, and we can't wait to pick her brain about what it's like to bring this story to the stage. She's busy running stuff on sets and doing all the things that moms do, so we're extremely grateful she's made some time for us. Sharyn Rothstein, welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. I know we kind of just reached out to you on a hunch here, but the more time we've spent with Hester Street, the more excited I think we are to really talk to you. So this is very cool.
Totally.
It's an incredible film, isn't it?
Definitely. The three of us discussed the movie in depth a couple days ago, and the three of us definitely agreed that it blew us away. And we all three came in with like kind of varying degrees of exposure to Joan Micklin Silver, but I think a lot of us had fairly minimal. Like I had only seen Bernice Bobs Her Hair. Emilio watched several in preparation, several of her films. And I know, Julian, you watched a couple as well. But
yeah, it was just Crossing Delancey, but yes.
Yeah. But I think the three of us were so like pleasantly, not necessarily surprised. I think we went in thinking like, oh, we'll probably like this movie. But I think it exceeded all of our expectations.
Yeah, it's so wildly ahead of its time. You know, and yet when you start it, you're like, oh, it feels old timey. And then kind of the radical thing about it is how ahead of its time it really is.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how often does a story get ahead of its time by going so retro?
That's right. Yeah.
That's a very good point. So, Sharyn, what is your personal history with the film Hester Street, and how did you end up coming to wanting to adapt it for the stage?
So, a bunch of years ago, a young theater producer reached out through a friend. His name is Michael Rabinowitz. He was looking for a playwright to adapt the movie. I hadn't actually seen the movie. I'd seen Crossing Delancey, but I hadn't seen Hester Street. And I am naturally suspicious of the whole let's adapt every movie ever made for a musical trend. There's quite a few over the years where my agents called me and been like, they want to turn this totally crap B movie from 1982 into a musical. And I'm like, why? Why does anyone need that? So I'm pretty suspicious. But the minute I watched Hester Street, I was smitten. I mean, there's a lot of personal connection there. My family are Eastern European, Russian Jews who escaped the pogroms and moved to the Lower East Side. And I grew up hearing all of the stories. My grandfather called my grandmother the fancy lady from Delancey Street, So,
I love that.
So it was just like immediately familiar to me. And that included the cadence, the way the characters spoke. I don't speak Yiddish, but my grandparents spoke Yiddish. It's just very familiar to me. I've always been like in love with Yiddish and jealous of the words and insults they have in Yiddish that we don't have in English. And most importantly, as I was saying, it felt like a movie that was ahead of its time. I mean, the character of Gitl, giving her so much agency and depth and also humor, it spoke to me on the deepest of levels. And so I met with the producer, Michael, and turned out that was kind of the easy part because then I had to meet with Joan Micklin Silver, and that was really intimidating.
I can imagine.
She's one of a kind. May she rest in peace.
Yeah.
She is a powerhouse. What she did at a time when there were so few women allowed to make their own movies is absolutely awe-inspiring. So I met with her. The day after Trump won the first time. And so there was just like shell shock. I can still remember feeling like, what reality did we just walk into? A feeling that hasn't changed. But what a kind of auspicious time to meet with someone of her ilk to talk about a story like this. And she could not have been more generous with me. She's shrewd, she's smart, and she was very protective of her work for great reason. But she told me about the making of the film, which was incredible and inspiring, and we can talk more about. And she told me how she had been very wary about any moves to adapt it in the past, but had come to think maybe now was the time, and ultimately gave me her blessing. And that started a multiple years process of me writing the stage adaptation, bringing in my incredible musical collaborator, Joel Wagoner, who wrote songs. It's not a musical. We created a play with music. And then we premiered it just 1 year ago exactly in Washington, D.C., where it did really well. And now it's nominated for a Helen Hayes Award. And
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
Mazel tov.
Thanks. And it's been a long ride. COVID happened in the middle of it. So
of course, yeah.
That interrupted everything. But I have never for 1 second have I not been totally in love with the characters and the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you had spoken a little bit about Gitl's humor, and I think that was something that we were really struck by, and I was really struck by, is how funny this movie is. Yeah. I feel like I was cracking up a lot throughout this movie in a way that I just was not expecting to.
Yeah, I mean, well, what genius to cast Carol Kane, who is so young in this movie that you actually almost can't believe it, and is like all eyeball in this movie. He's like 75% eyeball. But what genius to cast someone who has so much depth, but also can do comedy, you know,
Right.
so that you really end up feeling even worse for this young mother character who can't converse with the outside world because you know she has so much to say. And you
Yeah.
know it would be so delightful if she could say it. It's one of the movie's many acts of brilliance, I think.
Right.
Totally. When we were talking about humor, I think that one really wholesome moment that we all really enjoyed was during that scene in kind of the middle of the movie when Bernstein is teaching something to Josela and has this little prize that he gives him. He like reaches his hand over his back, and it's like, oh, look, a gift from heaven.
Yes. Yeah.
That moment
That's a good
too.
one.
Yeah. I don't know how much is like lore that's out there on the internet and how much is just conversation that I had with her and her family, who are also lovely. But she told me when they were making the movie, they couldn't get financing. Nobody
Right.
wanted to finance a Yiddish woman's story. They didn't want to give Joan Micklin Silver as a woman any money or let her use her creative vision in any way. And so her husband, who was in real estate, I believe, he said to her, we're going to make this movie. And he got all the funding for her,
Wow.
which is such a beautiful story.
Yeah, that's love.
But they still, you know, they were doing it kind of on a shoestring. So she said they had one horse. Have you heard this story?
I don't think so, no.
One horse. So they just kept walking the horse around like the block so it would look like they had a lot of horses in the movie.
They changed the saddle, put a different kid on top.
That's right.
I mean, that is both like a very scrappy production thing, and honestly, just something about that. Like, I should say, like, I'm Jewish too,
Mhm.
and my great grandmother also came through the Lower East Side more than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But something about like hearing that story, it really does almost sound like an old Jewish folktale in a way.
It does. It does. Yeah. Especially because, you know, I can remember the stories of my grandparents and great grandparents talking about how like there was one bathroom on the whole tenement floor, you know,
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
and you were
Yeah.
really out of luck if someone was in there. So,
Sure,
yes,
I believe it.
we're still making do. That was the idea, and got to use that horse as many times as possible.
Love that.
Don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
And thinking back to your stage adaptation of Hester Street, of course, it comes by way of Joan Micklin Silver's film. But even before that, there is Abraham Cahan's novella, Gitl, which goes all the way back to the time in which the film and the stage production are set. And because it has this very entrenched source material, like how did that affect your approach as a writer of the adaptation?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was such a gift because Gitl, if you read it, and I highly recommend it, it's short. It's told from, you know, Gitl is Jake's name before he changes it. So
Mhm.
Gitl is pretty much told from Jake's POV. Joan Micklin Silver did the, at the time, I think, radical and most interesting thing of making it more through Gitl's POV. And so I kind of had two POVs to play with.
Yeah.
And in the adaptation, what I wanted to do was I wanted to very much honor Joan Micklin Silver's work, but I also wanted to both bring it into the modern day, make sure that it was resonating with modern audiences. And, you know, I think in the movie, the character of Jake, it's so easy to see him as a cad.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And kind of roll your eyes at him. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to make him just as compelling, really, as Gitl. I mean, Gitl is always going to be the lead. She's always going to be the most compelling because she has she travels the furthest and she has so much at stake just by being a woman in that situation. But when you read Gitl, if you read it with an open heart, you really do kind of feel for Jake. He is very much a, you know, he grew up in the shtetl. He grew up without an education. He comes to America And boy, oh boy, the world is big and shiny, and he wants a part of it. It is such an American story, and he's been living there for years by himself. He has shined himself up, and it is so understandable that what he wants is a modern woman and a modern life. And the character of Mamie, who's one of my favorite characters too, she just represents America for him, which is ironic in and of itself since she's also an immigrant, but she's so much further along in her Americanization process.
Right.
And so I drew from the short story to give Jake even more pathos. And the actor who played Jake in our run in DC, Jake Horowitz, just was mesmerizing because there's many times where you're like, oh, Jake, stop being such a jerk. But then you're also like, I get it.
Yeah.
And at the end, my really deep goal was to make sure that at the end, when Jake has to say goodbye to his son, that it breaks your heart.
Because you really don't get that moment in the film.
You don't get that in the film, and I really wanted it on stage, and I really wanted it to hurt.
Yeah, I can see how that would add a lot to his story.
Yeah.
And her story as well.
Yeah.
It enhances her story as a mother rather than just this guy kind of disappeared on her.
Right.
But to see how their relationship has grown.
Yeah.
And how it's going to be hard for them to have him be absent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
She in the film is just so ready for him to be gone, which, I get.
Yeah. Which is great. And one of my favorite scenes in the film, and we tried to capture it on stage too, is that divorce scene.
Great scene.
Because
so good.
Oh,
wow.
It's so good. It's so rich. You have a sensation, especially for those of us who, I grew up Jewish, conservative, but if you didn't grow up, I think, in a Hasidic tradition, then the kind of mysticism of it and the rules around the divorce, that was all new to me.
Yeah.
And there's something so beautiful about it. And also the idea that we have to memorialize and ritualize divorce in the same way that we do for a wedding is kind of beautiful,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I felt that watching it. I was like, wow, there is as much reverence for the separation as there is for the joining.
Absolutely.
Which I was not ready for.
Yeah.
Completely not ready for.
And the rabbi tells Gitl that she needs to be able to accept the divorce with as much free will as she accepted the marriage, which I thought was really beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And then it turns out she can't remarry for much longer than him because things are still not, But it does show they both have agency in it,
Right.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the "here is thy divorce" moment. I thought that was very effectively funny in the way that she stages them.
Yeah.
And how kind of awkward they feel going through these motions.
Yeah. The thing that we kind of had to keep reminding ourselves when we were getting the stage adaptation on its feet is these people are so young. They are so young.
Yeah.
Gitl is like 22, 23, right? Jake is maybe 24. They have lived huge lives. They have had to leave everything they've known and their families, and yet they're still so young. And I think it's another reason why casting Carol Kane was so brilliant, because she just looks so young. She looks so small.
Yeah.
And yet she has so much power.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was only 23 when she got that Oscar nod, too.
Yeah.
Yes. An incredible performance based on what she has to portray on screen. And I think with all of the historical context, I'm kind of interested in hearing from your perspective too, Sharyn. Accessing and getting into this text, it's like, we mentioned, like, there were previous incarnations of this story that I think are pretty beloved. Putting your own stamp on it, I have to imagine, feels a little bit intimidating. It's pretty cool, though. I would just say, like, even doing it, my hat is off to you.
Well, it was incredibly rewarding, again, probably because of my own family ties, but also because we are a nation of immigrants. Every Jewish person in America. Came here from an immigration-based story. Many of us were refugees. And I worry that we forget that. And I worry that we take it for granted how hard it was for our ancestors to come here, how much discrimination they faced. And so it felt like this is the exact right moment to be revisiting this story in America. It feels even more so to me right now. And when I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I honor Joan's film, but also make it relevant to today? That's really where the idea of the music came in. And Joel Wagner came in and wrote these 5 songs that are incredibly funny and incredibly heartbreaking, and also are very now. And so those songs kind of break the fourth wall, so that we're still telling Gidl's story, and it's fully dimensional, and you're still going on that journey that Joan set up so beautifully. But it's punctuated by music that tells another immigrant story, and that really locates the show in 2025. And
Wow.
figuring that out was probably the trickiest part, but I think probably also the most rewarding.
Very cool. One of the things, just kind of looking through your work, I don't mean to generalize here, but it did seem like a lot of your plays confront modern realities. Like, I was noticing that By the Water, very clearly about the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, something that is very recent. But The Right to Be Forgotten also being a play about somebody trying to move on with your life in the face of like a very damaging internet footprint. And also, you recently wrote a play called A Good Farmer that also very directly addresses the current realities of undocumented workers being such a presence in our country's labor force. I was kind of interested in seeing that you, I think, are really interested in being able to talk about the here and now, but then also go back and try to tackle a story that is set not in the here and now, but maybe has something to say about the here and now.
Yeah. Well, I teach at NYU, and the thing I always start my classes with is by telling my students a writer is someone who has something to say. I know it sounds very basic, but I think it's important, especially, so much of Hollywood is we want to pay you to write for us, right? We don't want you to necessarily create your own thing. There's a really romantic idea that many of us, when we start in this business, we're like, I'm going to create my vision. I'm going to explore the things that matter to me. And then you need to pay your rent, and somebody is willing to give you some money to write their like stupid horror movie you don't care about. And you're like, great, I'll do that. Right.
Right.
And the beautiful thing about playwriting is that because very few people are going to pay you for it, it really can be what you want it to be.
Of course. Yeah.
And to me, it's one of the many reasons I will keep coming back to theater. Theater is a place where we explore deep things. It's a place for civic engagement. There's so few places in American life where we still congregate and spark discussion and kind of create community. And the theater very much under attack these days, but it is still that place. And I've always been a politically minded person. I've always been, fascinated by ideas of social responsibility and engagement. And I'm always looking for the intersection of like the big politics, big cultural events with the personal story. And
Right.
in Gitl, you get so much of that. I mean, she's literally fleeing a country, fleeing persecution and anti-Semitism to try to be a part of, and America was still pretty young at the time. You could argue maybe we're still young. Maybe we're going through our adolescence, and that's part of the problem right now. But
good point.
But, she is just being herself and living her life. But there's politics and there's cultural resonance everywhere. And that's exactly the kind of story that I love to tell.
Yeah, I mean, we agreed when discussing the film that of all the characters we meet, Gitl was the one that we really hoped she came out okay
Yeah.
at the end of it. But you also talked a little bit about in your adaptation, you wanted to give a little bit more empathy and humanity to Jake. And then you had also started to say how much you love Mamie. So I'm just kind of curious as to personal responses you had to the characters in the film, how you hope to tell that story in your adaptation.
Yeah, part of the reason I love Mamie so much, it's part of the reason I love Gitl so much too, is she has desire.
Yeah.
She has sexual desire. She has career desire. She has desires for the kind of woman she's going to be and the life she's going to have. This is part of why I feel like this film is so ahead of its time. It takes women's desires and sexuality seriously, And yet, even though Mamie feels all those things, she is principled. And you could argue in the film that maybe she's stringing Jake along a little bit. Maybe there's a little Anne Boleyn thing going on there. In the stage adaptation, I really tried to give her as much real estate to stand on as possible so that she knows what she wants. She is not afraid to go get it. And yet when she finds out that Jake is a married man, and, I'm taking this from the film, she says to him, I don't want to be with a married man. She really stands firm. And so it elevates the entire story from being like, oh, he's just a cheating louse. And the other woman is just some like sordid, hoe. Can I say that on your podcast?
You can say it.
Sure, that's fine.
Sordid hoe, is that okay?
I actually kind of like those two words put together. I don't know.
It would be a really good beer, the sordid hoe,
Yes.
Yes,
there's like a
absolutely.
microbrew somewhere in North Carolina.
You know it, 100%, and it's like a sorority favorite. I think in the movie she's already more than that, and in the adaptation, she's definitely more than that because she's 100% real, and that makes Jake's dilemma even more difficult. And it means that in that gorgeous scene where she comes into the apartment and Gitl meets her for this first time, which I think is one of the best scenes in American cinema, honestly. God, it's so loaded. It is so loaded, that
felt
scene.
the same.
Totally.
Yeah, we had a little talk about that.
Yeah.
Speaking of that scene and actually connecting it to another movie that came up in our prior discussion, Sharyn, have you seen the movie Between the Temples?
No, I was supposed to. I know I was supposed to. I had like 800 people tell me to go see that movie.
That's okay. I haven't seen it yet either.
haven't
So
either. I've heard it's
we
great.
will be forgiven.
It is great, but I thought of it just now because without spoiling anything, there is a scene in that feels very indebted to that scene in Hester Street you were just referring to. And one detail of that, which I really liked too while we're on it, is that you see that Gitl and Mamie clock who they are to each other pretty immediately, and yet the reaction, it's very knowing of the reality and yet non-judgmental between those two.
Yeah.
It's very like they seem to understand that it's really Jake who's the one. If anyone's in the wrong here, it's him.
That's right. And it's not catty,
Yeah, exactly.
It could have been. It could be so catty. And actually in the short story, it is catty.
Interesting.
I believe
But
that.
Joan did such an amazing job of elevating who she is. And I mean, like a lesson to all filmmakers, right? Mamie could be such an easy antagonist, such a one-dimensional antagonist. But by making her fully human, you make her a much better adversary dramatically. And you really feel for her. Joan did it. And then when we rehearsed that scene, and then when we saw it in front of an audience, your heart breaks for Mamie at the end of that scene, which I think is such an interesting, shift. You don't see it coming. You assume your heart will always break for Gitl, and actually it's breaking for both of them.
I love that point. Like you said, you feel heartbreak for Gitl. You feel anger towards Jake. You're like,
Yep.
Jake, what the hell?
Yes.
But the other thing, and that's exactly it, is when you see her like holding back tears, but also let me be nice to their son. Their son
Yes.
is innocent here. He's got nothing to do with this. You're like, okay, you know what? This woman, she's got a good heart, and she
Absolutely.
got duped, you know?
Yes. There's so much complexity. It's awesome.
Totally.
Yeah. You mentioned that there is the original music written by Joel Wagoner for the stage play. And though there is some noticeable music in the film, in fact, right away in the opening scene, we get some very salient music. It's still not like the most highlighted detail of the film anyway. And so was introducing the music merely a byproduct of telling the story through a new medium? Or were there like broader narrative considerations that went into that too?
Well, I will say when I talked to Joan Micklin Silver, she talked about how important the music was when she was scoring the film. And she really felt like the music in the film was intrinsic to making it as dynamic as it was.
I can see that.
So that, it was really interesting to hear her talk about that. But for our purposes, we wanted a Brechtian approach. I don't like museum pieces. I don't like the idea that an audience can just come in and watch this nice, like, nostalgic story about our ancestors having a tough time on the Upper East Side, and then everybody feels good about themselves and they go home. It's not what I'm here for. I want you to feel things, and I want you to have to actively engage with the play. I mean, I want you to have a wonderful time. I hope you do have a wonderful time, but I also want you to be an active participant. I think that's why you're in the theater. So the music was, I was going to say attempt, but I don't think it's an attempt. I think Joel totally delivered on this. It's Brechtian in that it's direct to the audience. What we did is we took the character of Joe Peltner, who owns the dance hall in the movie, and we essentially gave him his own story through song. And you're following it, and at first it feels really kind of jovial and leans into the nostalgia thing, and then it goes so deep and so heartbreaking, and you don't really see it coming. And the last song he sings is about immigrants dancing and how they do it all wrong. And it is just stunning. And so it also allows us to tell another kind of an immigrant story than just Gitl and Jake's. Because Gitl and Jake, even though, there is heartbreak there, they at least have each other. With Joe Peltner, what we created was the story of an immigrant who's all by himself and what that means.
Yeah.
And the losses he's faced along the way. We also did a similar thing, I will say, with Miss Kowarski. I gave Mrs. Kowarski a really long monologue that she doesn't have in the film, where you hear about everything she lost. And it's an opportunity to, and I mean, Miss Kowarski is such an incredible, iconic character already in Joe's
Yeah, we
film.
loved her.
So to be able to take all of the humor and all of the like ball busting that is just so intrinsic to that character, and then also give her this incredibly compelling true story that humanizes her deeply as well. That was really the name of the game. Like, use the music. Use anything I add needs to deepen the story and also engage the audience more directly so that they never get to feel like, they just were watching some nostalgic black and white picture show from the past.
Cool. I like that.
I have to say, too, that we didn't mention it in our prior conversation, but that Mrs. Kowarski had one of my favorite lines in the whole movie, which was, "With one tookus, you can't dance at two weddings."
That's right.
Yeah,
Which I
that's
grew up hearing. That was like,
Yeah.
my mother said that to me all the time.
So whenever we talk about a movie on this podcast, we always save some time to call out a favorite small detail or notable moment, something that maybe wouldn't register for everyone, but jumped out to one of us. So was there a detail or a moment like that from the original film that you honed in on and maybe were motivated to include in your adaptation?
I mean, so many. It's such a iconic moment in the film. But when Gitl takes off her wig for the first time and her
Yeah.
hair is matted and ugly. I mean, it literally says in the stage direction that it's like, I think it says matted and ugly, or it's a word like that, homely
Yeah.
maybe. And yet she's so filled with desire, sexual desire, love. She hasn't seen her husband in so many years. It is just such a heartbreaking moment, and such a moment that I think every woman in the world can relate to. You know? And she thinks, surely he must love me and desire me just as much as I love and desire him, and doesn't even really realize yet that she's standing in front of a totally different person.
Yeah.
Who sees her in a totally different way and in such a degrading way.
Yeah.
So that the whole story is in that moment,
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think something that stuck out to us is the way that Joan chose to film that moment in the movie, in that the camera like pans away from Gitl the first time she takes off her wig. We don't see her hair in the film, which we thought was such a cool nod to the fact that like she isn't ready to reveal it yet. And she even asks Jake to turn away. And we thought that was very cool and like a very nice directorial touch.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And then when she goes outside and Bernstein is there and she wasn't expecting him, and her hand flies to her head because he can't see her like that. Again, just the whole story is told in those moments,
Right.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I think all three of us, when we talked, we were like, that scene, that one. Like it really was like the one that just brought us right in. So that's so cool.
Totally.
Yeah.
All four of us, I guess, had a response to that.
Yeah, just totally organically.
Yeah.
Thinking back to your to the stage production of the film that you helmed, was there a favorite compliment that you received when audiences could finally see the play, and what made that meaningful to you?
There were so many audience members who said, "This is my family's story. This is my grandmother's story. This is my mother's story." I had some older audience members who felt that we had done such a great, and I have to give so much love to my director, Oliver Butler, and my incredible cast. Sarah Kapner played Gitl, who they learned Yiddish. I will just say, my cast had to learn Yiddish,
just like Carol Kane.
Very Carol Kane-esque.
We did it in Yiddish with subtitles, and we had 3 musicians who had to play their musical instruments on stage, learn Yiddish.
Wow.
I mean, like, just
full commit.
This cast is all stars, and so many people would come up to us after with tears in their eyes and thank us, which is, there's no higher praise than that, because they felt that what they had just seen was so real and honored their families so deeply. And, in no small part, that is due to Joan Micklin Silver's story itself. But it also just, it meant the world, because it meant we'd gotten it right,
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Where can people find you and see your work?
Well, I have a new play called Bad Books that is currently playing at Florida Studio Theater in Sarasota, and it is going to be opening at Roundhouse Theater in Bethesda at the beginning of April. And that is a very, very funny play about book banning.
My sister would love that.
And it's going to be at several theaters around the country this year. Actually, it's going to be in Colorado and Michigan. So I'm really excited about that.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Mazel
Thank you.
tov.
Thank you. I'm really excited about that. And then, as you said, Suits LA is on Sunday nights on NBC, and you can stream it on Peacock. And it's been an awfully fun show to work on. So I hope people check it out.
Yeah. I got to say, I got very emotional because John Amos is in that. I know that's like the last thing he shot.
It is. Yeah.
you can tell he's coming on in age, and I got kind of emotional watching it.
You should definitely keep watching because
Okay.
we do a really, I think, beautiful tribute episode.
Oh, good.
It's really great.
Very cool.
I'm in. I'm all in. Awesome. Sharyn, thank you so much for making time for us. We greatly
Absolutely. Thank
appreciate
you.
this.
This was fantastic.
Oh, thank
For us,
you.
too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
we had
thanks
so
for
much
being
fun.
here.
It's so much fun to get to talk about Hester Street with like-minded cinema nerds. Said with so much love and
Oh,
respect.
absolutely.
And thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you again. It was great
Nice
to
to
meet
meet
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
guys.
Are we feeling like some unlikely universe sharing is afoot?
Definitely.
All right. May I kick this off?
Go for it.
Do it, man.
All right. So in Hester Street, we see only the beginnings of each of its characters' lives in America. But let's say they are just the first of many generations to come. The youngest character we see, Yosela, or Joey, may eventually have a family of his own and become grandfather to a young girl named Carla. Born sometime in the late 40s or early 1950s, Carla grows up in New York during the Red Scare. And steadfast in their devotion to the communist cause, her parents, even though they are a Jewish family, they do not let her have a bat mitzvah when she turns 13. Much to her chagrin, Carla, but she persists nonetheless. Persevering through high school, college, and eventually the uncertainty of her early 20s, Carla decides to take a job as a bank teller to save up some money, which
Sorry. Good. Go.
which is mostly an innocuous experience until one
On
extreme-
fateful day.
extremely warm
Hot
day
day.
Afternoon.
in summer 1972 when two robbers decide to hold up the bank where she works.
It starts as 3.
Yeah, it was three.
Starts as
One
three,
bails.
one bails, and take all of its workers hostage as they demand ransom money to be used for the sex change operation of one of those robbers' alleged wife. During this experience, Carla gives the name Jenny when asked to avoid revealing too much about her own identity.
Smart move.
Yeah.
And
good move.
but then she's also referred to as a squirrel after the lead thief, Sonny, finds her crouching under a desk in a squirrel-like pose. Over the course of roughly 12 hours that ensue, Carla and her fellow hostages are eventually freed after these two thieves fall for a ruse led by the police. But traumatized, very understandably, by the experience, Carla, not Jenny, decides that she is leaving her bank teller life behind to pursue her true passion, which is music education. Carla eventually earns her teaching license, finds a husband, and moves to a small town upstate where she finds steady work at a local school while also raising a son. And around 50 years after this bank debacle, Carla's husband has passed away, her son has a family of his own, leaving her more or less alone. Until one day, when she is spending time at a local tavern and a former student of hers named Ben wanders in. Now, Ben is clearly in some kind of crisis himself and has an altercation with a rude fellow bar patron, to which Carla steps in to rescue him. And upon learning that this Ben is the cantor at the local synagogue, Carla realizes that her chance to have a bat mitzvah may finally have arrived at long last. Now, I know you both know one of these associations.
I know both of these.
I know
And
both of them, but I can't remember the name. It's the newest
It's
one.
Between the Temples.
Between the Temples.
which
wanted
I
to call
haven't seen, but you had told us that you were going to do Carol Kane and that it was going to be an older film and a newer film. And I said, I immediately know what two you're going to do. And I was right.
Yes.
There we go. I almost called it Between Two Ferns. Um,
Also a great movie.
Also, yes.
Also, not to be confused with Between the Lines, which is another
That's what I
Joan
was about
Micklin
to say.
Silver.
Joan
film.
Micklin Silver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, Between the Temples. Yeah, this just came out in 2024. I saw it on opening night with a Q&A. Great movie. And if I may say so myself, The Brutalist, great depiction of the Jewish experience post-World War II. A Real Pain, great film about the about Jewish heritage and exploring it. But in my humble opinion, Between the Temples is the most Jewish movie of 2024. Yeah.
In a good way.
Oh, yes, in a very, very good way.
Sweet.
Okay, moving on.
I can go?
Sure.
You want? All right, cool. In Hester Street, we meet Mrs. Kowarski, a nosy but well-meaning neighbor and eventual confidant for Gitl. What we don't see is that Mrs. Kowarski is an empty nester. She has a son who recently left her home to start working for himself and start a life. He stays local to check in on his mother and becomes reasonably successful in business, but is a late bloomer when it comes to finding love. Eventually, when her son is in his 40s, a local matchmaker and friend of his mother's finds him a nice lady, and the two of them start a life together. They have some kids, and amongst them is a daughter. Let's just call this daughter Martha. Martha also stays local in New York City, not necessarily out of filial piety, but more because she just loves the city. And she is luckier in love than her father, and by her early 20s, she marries a young man. Let's just call him Robert Cantro, who goes off to fight in World War II, returns back home when the war is over, and the two of them have a son named Leonard. Leonard grows up to also enlist in the army, but a lower back injury seems to have kept him out of engaging in frontline combat and keeps him serving domestically. Leonard grows up to be a rather restless sporting goods salesman, also staying in New York City. He meets a young woman named Lila and decides to marry her, perhaps a little too impulsively. His mother, Martha, is there, present at the wedding, but is not present at their honeymoon, which becomes a slow realization to Leonard, now going by Lenny, that he and Lila are not so much peas in a pod, but more oil and water. His buyer's remorse is worsened by the presence of Kelly, a young, wealthy college student on vacation with her family, who takes an interest in Lenny, who in turn becomes obsessed with her and becomes hellbent on dissolving his marriage with Lila as quickly as possible to pursue Kelly. Martha is also not present at the brief legal proceedings to end this marriage, but perhaps Martha, and by extension Lenny, could have found some chutzpah in the settlement part of this whole thing. The kind of chutzpah that Martha's grandmother, Lenny's great-grandmother, Mrs. Kowarski, showed while supporting Gitl in her own divorce proceedings at the turn of the 20th century. Maybe Lenny could have come out a quote-unquote winner, despite claiming he didn't want to or deserve to. What is this movie?
Unfortunately, I have no clue.
Yeah, you got me.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm excited to say that this is The Heartbreak Kid.
Okay. Yes, and I've seen this.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I have not seen it.
I guess I forgot that she was. Oh, you know what? I did know she was in that, but she's not.
She's not all
in
that
it
present.
that much.
No. She is Lenny's mom.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen this movie.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah,
you're talking
it's a
about
great one. Elaine May.
I'm not talking about the remake with Ben Stiller
Right.
and Malin
That one I have
Ackerman.
not seen.
I've seen enough of it to know that it is horrible.
I've heard it's bad.
The original is
The original's great.
incredible. If you haven't seen it, listeners, or Julian,
Julian.
The Heartbreak Kid is so good. And I think
Yeah.
actually an interesting movie to talk about when we talk about 1970s films. It's very briefly an NYC film.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we kind of brought it up as a possibility. And Emilio, you and I were like, I don't think it's NYC enough for
Yes,
this cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're not thinking about a cycle and you're just looking for an interesting well-made movie, Heartbreak Kid is awesome.
Totally.
And the actress you're talking about is Doris Roberts.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Doris
Yeah.
Roberts. I'm sorry.
I was kind of trying to think, like, what do I know her from? Are you going to do Everybody Loves Raymond?
Definitely not. But that's, I think, why
or
most
like
people
National
would know her.
Lampoon's Christmas Vacation,
Yep.
right? She's in.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No. Definitely Heartbreak Kid. I love that movie.
So I won't be connecting through an actor. I'll be connecting through community.
All right.
So we don't know much about Bernstein's background, but let's say that he has a cousin back in Poland who also studies the Talmud. In fact, his cousin, Avigdor, will begin his studies at a yeshiva just a few years after the events of Hester Street. And one day, Bernstein receives an ardent letter from Avigdor, which implores Bernstein to assist a young female friend of Avigdor's, who is soon to land in America after emigrating from Poland. Avigdor is oddly elusive about how he knows this young woman. What he does not want Bernstein to know is that Avigdor met this young woman while they were both studying at a yeshiva. Now, of course, at this time, it was completely forbidden for women to study the Talmud, much less enter formal education to do so.
Yep.
So this young woman had to dress in drag and take on a secret identity. under the name of Anshul. Anshul and Avigdor struck up a friendship while at school, but over time, they each began to develop feelings for each other, which is obviously very complicated for Avigdor, since as far as he knows, Anshul is a man. Although the two of them do decide to part after this is revealed, they stay in touch as friends over the coming months, and Anshul informs Avigdor when she decides to live as her true self and immigrate to America, where she will be allowed to study the Talmud openly. Avigdor writes to his cousin Bernstein to implore him to seek out his friend and help her as she settles into America.
I love that you chose this one.
Thank you.
I don't know for certain, but I have an inspired guess.
Yentl.
That's what I was going to say.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
Great movie. Really fun movie.
I still haven't
Weird
seen, too.
movie.
It's kind of weird, but it's also, there's something about the way that movie unfolds that kind of sucks you in. It's weird. It's like it doesn't know if it wants to be a musical or not.
Yeah.
But it has some really strong performances.
Yeah, it's like it has like one song that it does over and over again.
Yeah.
But sung by Barbara Streisand, so you're kind of like, okay, sure. Like she really does it. But half the time she's kind of just imagining it. Like it's not really a musical in the traditional sense of like breaking into song. She doesn't do that a whole lot. But it's very effective. She directs this and stars in it. It's very entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it takes place in the very early 20th century. So just a few years after.
The timing's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that we've gotten into our closing remarks about Hester Street now, but going back to the zeitgeist of Jewishness in cinema, something else that came up, in that panel that I've been referring to, but also just that if you examine the history of this lineage portrayed in film, something that comes up a lot is the element of questions, uncertainty, anxiety, neurosis. Those are often common themes in portrayals of Jewishness in cinema. And then, as we were discussing which directors do or don't engage with that earlier, I mean, of course, I had to think of the Coen brothers. And I think there's, unless I'm forgetting something, there's only one movie of theirs that directly engages with Jewishness, which is A Serious Man.
Yep.
Even though a bunch of their other movies, even though they're not about Jewishness per se, there's a Jewish sensibility about them. Maybe it's in like the philosophy, the sense of humor, that kind of stuff. But anyway, A Serious Man is a movie that's all about that sense of uncertainty and just kind of accepting all of these seemingly random blows that the world deals to you. And to tie it back to Hester Street, I like that this is a movie that when you get to its resolution has a lot of certainty to it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of anxiety that you see in it, but I think something I really like about this movie, and this is not a criticism of movies that go the other way, but it doesn't really wallow in the anxiety. It treats it honestly, but it has a full range of emotions, and it also, in its tight structure, finds, a really, I think, very comforting certainty as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very nicely said.
Thank you.
Any other final thoughts as we wrap up Hester Street?
I'm really glad I watched this movie in a non-drowsy state. Gotta say, I had a really wonderful time with it. I'm excited to see it again. Also, just in general, I'm really grateful that we talked about this film because I do think that, like I said, I've always been interested in exploring the work of more female writer-directors. And like I said before, Joan Micklin Silver was completely not on my radar, and she is now. And yeah, good choice.
Totally. I'm just excited to watch Crossing Delancey now, which you guys have both seen and I haven't. Kind of want to rewatch Bernice Bobs Her Hair. It's very fun. I really enjoyed this one. This was a pleasant surprise for me. This is a deep cut. It's kind of a niche film. And I hope that we are able to get some people to watch it because I think it's extremely underrated.
Yeah. And on that note, I mean, listeners, at the time that this comes out, this will probably still be true that there is a great collection on the Criterion channel right now of films directed by Joan Micklin Silver. That's how I watched both Hester Street and Crossing Delancey. Bernice Bobs Her Hair is on that too. Between the Lines, Chilly Scenes of Winter. This is not a paid plug for Criterion. I just came across one last detail I forgot to mention that is very fitting to mention at the end of the conversation, which has to do with Carol Kane's Oscar nomination.
Right.
Do either of you know how that happened?
No?
How she got nominated?
Yeah.
Because she's great in this.
Well, first and foremost, yes, but there was a specific element of campaigning. that led to it. And that it was by an old Hollywood publicist named Max Burkett, who went around to the houses of people like Frank Sinatra with a canister of the film of Hester Street and just showed it to them. So that is an important procedure, but a little piece of trivia. Do any guesses as to a prior Oscar campaign that he may have bolstered that led to a win?
I'm going to say it's Midnight Cowboy.
That it's not Midnight Cowboy, but that's a good guess.
Okay.
Because of a different film from the same director.
I'm going to say, was it a recent film to the one that we're discussing now?
Relatively, yes.
Darling?
Yep.
Ah.
Yeah, he helped Julie Christie win.
Very cool.
Yes, and so he lent his talents to Carol Kane as well.
Nice.
And that is how, in what is, as we refer to, a very stacked year at the Oscars, that's how this very deserving nomination managed to break in.
Yeah. And I feel like when we were talking about the Oscars, we would come across these films and we'd be like, wait, what? Like,
what is that?
What is that? Like,
Yeah.
they don't really persist in like kind of more mainstream movie culture. But a lot of times these movies there's something really special about them, or
Yes.
there's something that really connects or lands for audiences. And I think this is a really good example.
Totally.
Absolutely. Next time you listen to us talk in our New York City movie cycle, we are arriving at our suggestion box pick, which is a movie. If you're familiar with our formats, that's a movie that at least one of us suggests to someone else in the group who has not seen it yet. And I'm really excited for this one. We're going to be discussing a film that is rather recent as opposed to Hester Street, which is 50 years old now. This is a film just released 1 year before we're recording this that will deal with some pretty similar themes in a very, very different way. And that film is Problemista.
And I believe this is another feature film directorial debut.
It is, yes.
For
Julio.
Writer-director,
Torres.
yeah. too.
Yes.
Very cool. I'm the one who has not seen this film.
Yeah. Julian and I think both saw this in theaters.
Yes.
But yeah, highly recommend. I'm really excited to rewatch this.
Very, very cool.
Well, in addition to this podcast, you can follow us on Instagram and probably still TikTok at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email. We love when we hear from you. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. If you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me, Madeline, at Patroness of Cats.
And you can follow me, Julian, at Julian_Barthold. If you're listening to us for the first time, thank you for finding us. If this is the 4th or 5th or 50th, yes, we've hit that number, time you've listened to us, thank you for sticking with us. We have really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
And if you haven't already, we'd ask you, return listener, to please write us a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. Short and sweet works. It's one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. You can also keep it grassroots, and you can tell a friend to tell a friend about the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. That helps too.
And now we are saying yes to sleep. Good night, everybody.